but I was part of the volume that Julian Assange was the editor for, or WikiLeaks was the editor for, which had chapters on each of the major categories of WikiLeaks documents. I did the one on Iran, and I'm proud to say that I was part of that volume, which I think was a very valuable addition to the literature on U.S. foreign policy and national security policy. What I found was that the New York Times had fundamentally misrepresented a whole series of documents, and that I, in fact, wrote a couple of pieces which showed how fundamentally the Times had misrepresented those WikiLeaks documents. So my point is that the WikiLeaks documents really did provide a window on the truth about what had happened with regard to the United States and Iran, which then the New York Times proceeded to completely misrepresent in their own coverage. The Pentagon Papers were misreported by the New York Times and by others, that the message that he had hoped would come through from the Pentagon Papers really didn't come through. It was very circumscribed, if at all reflected in the New York Times coverage of the Pentagon Papers and the other major media coverage of the Pentagon Papers. And instead, they sensationalized it and didn't convey fully the significance of what Dan Ellsberg, and I would agree with him, were the essential lessons to be learned from the Pentagon Papers. So by the time of the 2016 election, Assange had become persona non grata with corporate media because they were obviously on the other side by that time. They had learned that he was dangerous to them to be associated with Julian Assange, even though they had published the stuff that came from Assange, and in that sense should in fact be lining up behind it, absolutely. But politically, that was no longer feasible, or it was no longer wise, shall we say, from their point of view. You know, it's up to Americans, left, right, and center, to try to bring this message that Julian Assange has been working to make available to the world, but particularly to the American people, most importantly of all, to continue to bring that message to the public in the United States. And part of that message now is that it's terribly important that Julian Assange not be allowed to fall into the clutches of the US government.